Hello there, so we have the AI race that is all about intelligence apparently, while I would really argue that speed, context window, and price really matters. And arguably, well, early on, intelligence mattered a lot because AI was kind of on the point of like, was it even worth using, right? It needed to justify itself, but now we are kind of at the point where, for most use cases, AI might be good enough. And no doubt, top intelligence could be justified, but such cases might be actually the minority. So while we can see the top 5 is Claude Sonnet thinking, smart guy, big fan of it for coding. I'm not really sure if it makes sense for much else, although you can see that it does have a very high average score. O3 Mini high, O1 high, Grok free thinking, and DeepSeek R1, the fan favorite. And as long as you have access, as much as you have access, I guess these are the guys you might use if you want top shelf intelligence. Yet that does not really mean that they're the best, because personally, my favorite one would be if I'm reaching for something that requires intelligence, but doesn't need to be the smartest, would be Gemini 2 Flash Thinking. But why? It is dumber, right? It is totally pointless. Well, it does matter because Gemini 2 Flash Thinking has a bigger context window than almost any of these, and also answers much faster. But truly, the king would be Gemini 2 Flash, which also skips the thinking part and just gives you an answer really fast. And gotta keep in mind that the score is kinda close. But let's just look at other graphs that support my point even better. So we see Gemini 2 Flash Thinking with 272 output tokens per second. Now, this could be a massive deal, especially if you use it as chat. So, you're not sitting there doing nothing, twiddling your thumbs, which one might argue can describe the DeepSeek experience. Although the answers could be good, but they are not fast. In fact, the speed is so good that it opens up like pseudo real-time interaction with it. Also, special mention is that Gemini 2 Flash is entirely free to use, and also you get, even as an API, 1,500 requests per day for free with it, but also it costs 0.1 in and 0.4 out. So that is pretty dang cheap, and that is, let's just say, extremely competitive compared to its challengers, especially GPT 4.5 preview, which is $75 in and $150 out. Literally 450 times more expensive. But it's not just the speed and the price. So we can see that we have O3 Mini High and O1 here. So they're kind of smart guys, and even R1 here. So that's interesting. But they kind of have flaws. And that flaw is called context window. There you go. So DeepSeek versions 128K, and all OpenAIs have a 128K too. So this absolutely does not matter as long as you want a short answer, right? And it doesn't have to consider that much of a context window. But you also got to keep in mind that this will not even suffice to summarize a book, for example. Even 200K would be a challenge. So at 1 million, we are really opening up some doors. And only XAI and Google, I guess Gemini and the Grok is there. I suppose we have Minimax too, but that is really struggling with intelligence. Gemini 2 Pro doesn't really make sense unless you really need the 2 million context window. Otherwise, it just makes more sense to use Gemini 2 Flash or Flash Thinking. But we must put context window in the proper context, because if you keep using it, or if you have a bigger project outside of like, oh, make me a snake game or something, you're gonna need context window. If you have a long chat with AI, you're gonna need context window. In fact, one of the early reasons Claude had a leg up on OpenAI was because of their slightly bigger context window, which is like still like double almost. And that matters. So this especially applies to O1 and R1, is that, yeah, you have O1 here, but also it's slow it's expensive. This does not apply to R1, thankfully. And the context window is mad too. So R1 has the same problems. It is slow and also kind of more limited with the context window, but at least it's actually, no other way to say it, it is the most affordable smart AI by far. Now we have O3 Mini here. Of course, the context window is not great, and the price isn't that great either, but at least it's not like the others. But let's just see it live. You have to turn on the reason every time, because they're cheap bastards. So, anyway, let's see how it goes. So it's reasoning, and this could take a long time. And that could be annoying. So if we were using Gemini Flash here, we would already have an answer. So like, okay, I'm still thinking. Now, I think it could be interesting to see the thinking process. And it can be useful, especially if it gets things wrong or you need to understand it. But in most cases, it doesn't lead to the best user experience. And in this case, we got a rather short answer. So it mostly just telling us to get lost. Okay, let's try this. Give me a detailed list with reasoning. What are the best programming languages? So the thing is, if the answer is longer, and especially the thinking process is longer, then we'll be waiting here quite a bit. Unlike the advertised, oh, it's gonna be super fast. It's like, yeah, maybe, to the point you're actually getting the answer, but the thinking process can just take away from it. But O3 Mini High would be actually quite decent, because we can see that it's 1.1 in and 4.4 out. It has intelligence, speed, and somewhat of a price that is competitive. At least it's competitive against Claude, and mainly against OpenAI's other offerings. And even the context window is 200k, so it's competitive with Claude. And it's easily OpenAI's most well-rounded model. But arguably, if you want to keep using AI in the same context window is kind of important. If you compare it to the Gemini experience, and this one is the thinking version. So this is usually like things for like 5 seconds or so. Also, added benefit that we can customize this AI on the side. So this is not really an option. You can turn off all safety settings like I have, and change the temperature, whether you want it to be more creative or trying to be more factual. Anyway, this was not about the answer, but the actual kind of user experience. And this is even better with Flash. You just see a rapid fire answer. And this matters so much. I cannot really emphasize how much the speed matters, because you can work with this. And if you try to use DeepSeek, for example, it certainly gives you high quality answers, and that's great. DeepSeek is really good for that. Like, you ask a question and you just walk away. Like, I'm just gonna come back to a banging answer later, but it's probably not something that you feel good about waiting for. We also have Grok here. It's not super relevant. It is the only alternative if you want a bigger context window. I'm not in Japan, and I don't have anything set to Japanese, although I guess I picked up some Japanese from watching some anime. So I can't decide if Grok is kind of making a mistake or maybe calling me out here. Grok ようこそ。今日はどのようなお手伝いしましょうか？何を知りたいですか？ What is that? 思考する? We need thinking here. So personally, when it comes to just chatting with the AI, I guess intelligence probably matters the most. So I'm not gonna disregard that. But after that, it's gonna be speed, and after that, it's gonna be context window. I guess price matters in the context of, can you keep chatting with it? Because you might even see that you might pay for some AIs, and they actually force you to pay, like others that are entirely free. And they say like, oh yeah, you can use it as much as you like. Of course, they might give you limitations in the first place, or not give you answers. So DeepSeek is kind of known for not giving you an answer. Others are like, yeah, you just get like a few answers, and that's fine. And if you pay, either you get unlimited answers, but even in that case, you might not get unlimited answers. That's not true unlimited. If you keep asking answers, After a few hours, they might just tell you that, oh, you should just get lost, I guess. And even if they don't do that, they might just slow down your answers over time. We do see that. Like, for example, we see that Gemini 2 Flash is kind of holding steady. In fact, they use more powerful resources to reply to bigger inputs. But others tend to drop down, right? So at the very least, the bigger you ask, the longer it's gonna take. Not really surprising, just keep it in mind. And for many cases, context window is arguably, possibly, the most important stat, right? And you will need a big context window. If you want to summarize a book, you need a big context window. If you wanna chat for a long time, you need context window. So a very common experience, at least for me, was that Claude 3.5 was pretty good for coding, but it got significantly less good, let's just use that, after you went past the context window. And you just received non-stop nonsense, like you're trying to write a book, but you can only remember either the last 200 pages, or let's say random 200 pages. So it's not a big problem yet, possibly. And when it comes to the intelligence versus context window, basically it's Gemini and nothing else. We have mini Max, I suppose, but it's not that smart. And for APIs and services, again, probably intelligence matters the most, and I guess price along with it. But if you need fast responses, then obviously speed is critical, and it could allow you almost real-time answers, which is kind of a great user experience. So for example, with Gemini Flash, you can do this. I just search for dog. I mean, wait a little bit. And boom, comes in, Sam AI, and we already got an answer. And pretty much with everything else, the user experience is garbage. So for that use case, speed is a must-have. But of course, if you're just crunching away in the back, then I guess price and intelligence is what matters the most. But even then, if you need the context window, then it becomes an absolute wall. So if you ever need something that needs more than 200 context, 200K, then it's pretty much Gemini 2 Flash or Gemini 2 Pro. And Grok is a little unproven, but maybe I'll check it a bit more in the future. So personally, I'm not that interested in seeing like O1-like models where the speed sucks, the price sucks too, and the context window sucks too. But oh boy, it is really smart in that tiny little context. Just you wait. At least R1, its main contender, would be cheap. But even that is, despite how much I like it, I'm kinda very much drawn to Gemini 2 Flash as much as possible. And if that doesn't work out, the alternatives tend to feel a little bad. So my takeaway is that it's not just intelligence, but also price. You're hearing that, OpenAI? But also speed. Yes. And also context window. Or it's just only useful for some kind of a little bit of a showcase. Like, oh, look at me. I'm making some kind of a Tetris. Wow, so good. Wow, that's so cool. Can you expand it? No, that's too much context. And that is why, drum roll, that I already kind of said before, my favorite AI would be Gemini 2 Flash. Of course, depends on the use case. If you want to code, then I guess Claude 3 Sonnet thinking is gonna be the way to go. But for most use cases, and I mean as a chat and as an API, this is literally the best thing out there. It is pretty smart. It is the fastest when it comes to speed. The price is dirt cheap. It's 0.1 in and 0.4 out. And the context window is 1 million. If you need the context, well, obviously, that's gonna be mission critical, but also it's gonna feel smarter too. Of course, this is not about Gemini, but the context window could mean that you are actually making some kind of progress, assuming that you are interacting it for a long time and you are keeping the context, versus you are just kind of reminding of things that you kind of said before. It's like, oh no, we're just going around in circles, talking to some real smart guy who kind of has Alzheimer's now. So that's pretty much it. I'm not sure how to end this. If we are talking about actually useful AI, it needs to either check all the boxes or at least all the relevant boxes for you. And up to this point, mainly, the customers weren't the customers, but the investors. They just make AIs to look good for the showcase. And everyone going for intelligence and trying to arbitrarily price things pretty high, that doesn't even make sense. It's just kind of stupid. So I would like to see more actually useful AIs that are a good mix of intelligence, speed, price, and context window. Not just trying to score high on the smarts benchmark.